He mocked a quiet old man in front of his students, then watched his ego crumble in 6 seconds flat. Rex Vulcan ruled his gym with noise and flair, until a silent stranger taught him the meaning of a real kick. One perfect strike. No sweat, no theatrics, just the kind of mastery you never see coming. Welcome to Stallone Unleashed. Let's uncover what really happened. Sylvester Stallone sat in his sleek office overlooking the bustling car dealership, the hum of activity below both familiar and unsettling. Despite years of success in the film industry, this venture into the automotive world was deeply personal. He had invested not just money, but his reputation into this dealership, envisioning it as a place where customers could trust they were treated fairly. Lately, however, whispers from loyal customers hinted at something amiss. Stories of hidden fees, pushy sales tactics, and outright dishonesty had begun to tarnish the dealership's hard-earned name. Sylvester knew he couldn't just rely on reports or second-hand accounts. He needed to see the truth for himself, unfiltered and raw. After much thought, the decision crystallized. He would go undercover. Disguised as an ordinary customer, he would walk the showroom floor, engage with the salespeople, and experience the dealership from the perspective of those he hoped to serve. It wasn't a decision made lightly. He understood the risks involved. If any staff recognized him, it could create awkwardness or even compromise his plan. But he believed that true leadership meant confronting problems head-on, even if that meant stepping out of the spotlight and into the shoes of a regular buyer. That evening, Sylvester meticulously prepared. Gone was the Hollywood star's confident swagger. In its place, he donned a plain baseball cap, casual jeans, and a worn leather jacket, clothes that blended into the crowd. He practiced a new name and backstory, rehearsing answers that sounded believable but kept questions at bay. His mind replayed all the reports he'd heard, steeling himself to spot any signs of deception or unfairness. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the dealership, Sylvester took a deep breath and stepped out of his office, ready to enter the showroom as someone else. The next few hours would reveal the real face of his business, whether it lived up to his values or had strayed into murky territory. There was no turning back now. The decision was made. He was going undercover, and he was determined to uncover the truth no matter what it took. The next morning, Sylvester Stallone arrived at the dealership, blending seamlessly with the steady flow of regular customers. Gone was the unmistakable aura of a Hollywood legend. Instead, he embodied the image of an everyday man looking for a reliable vehicle. His baseball cap was pulled low, shadowing his face, and the simple jacket he wore softened his usually commanding presence. He moved deliberately, his steps casual but purposeful, as he crossed the threshold into the showroom. He took a moment to observe the bustling floor, clusters of customers browsing, salesmen in crisp suits exchanging greetings, and the gleam of polished cars reflecting the bright overhead lights. Sylvester's heart quickened not from fame, but from a renewed sense of purpose. Today, he wasn't the star whose name graced billboards or movie credits. He was a customer with questions, concerns, and the right to be treated with honesty. Approaching the first available salesperson, Sylvester extended a firm handshake and introduced himself with the alias Mike Reynolds. He kept his voice steady, his manner approachable but cautious. The salesman smiled broadly, exuding practiced charm, and immediately launched into the usual routine, asking about preferences, budgets, and intended use. Sylvester answered carefully, giving enough detail to seem genuine without revealing too much. As they walked through rows of vehicles, Sylvester took mental notes. Every pitch, every offer, every hesitation would be stored for later scrutiny. He paid close attention to the salesman's language. Were the promises realistic? Were the costs clearly stated? Was there pressure beneath the polished veneer? Sylvester knew the answers to these questions would determine not only his purchase, but the integrity of the entire dealership. Throughout the interaction, Sylvester remained alert but patient. He tested the waters, asking about warranties, financing options, and trade-in values. Some answers were straightforward, others vague or evasive. The salesman's confidence never wavered, but Sylvester detected subtle signs of overreach. Small exaggerations masked as benefits, glossed over fees, and an eagerness that bordered on pushy. By the time they concluded the conversation, Sylvester felt a mixture of resolve and concern. The dealership's polished surface was intact, but beneath it, cracks were beginning to show. As Mike Reynolds, he knew this was only the beginning of his undercover journey, and that the real test was yet to come. Sylvester Stallone, now fully in the guise of Mike Reynolds, took a slow walk through the dealership's showroom, letting his eyes scan the environment with fresh scrutiny. The air was thick with a mix of new car scent and the faint buzz of conversation, punctuated by the occasional ringing of phones and clatter of keyboards. Bright overhead lights reflected off shiny paint jobs, and banners boasting special deals hung from the ceiling. On the surface, everything looked perfect, a polished, inviting space designed to draw customers in and make them feel at ease. But Sylvester wasn't here for appearances. His focus sharpened as he noticed the subtle details that only someone looking for the truth would catch. The friendly greetings from sales staff were abundant, but he sensed a rehearsed quality behind some smiles, as if charm had been perfected into a sales weapon. A few salesmen clustered near desks, exchanging quick glances as new customers approached, their eyes flicking toward Sylvester as he passed. He caught the wary look from one younger salesman, but no one stepped forward immediately. He was still just another potential buyer. A reception desk man by a cheerful assistant offered quick, polite help to those who asked, but Stallone noticed that not every question was met with full transparency. When he inquired quietly about financing options, the assistant's answer was courteous but vague, redirecting him swiftly to a salesman without going into much detail. It was the kind of deflection that might escape a casual visitor but stood out sharply to someone seeking honesty. The waiting area, with comfortable chairs and a small coffee station, seemed designed to distract and placate. A flat-screen TV played commercials showcasing happy customers and glowing testimonials. Sylvester's gaze lingered on a wall of awards and certificates, some authentic, some looking suspiciously generic. His gut told him that while the dealership projected success and trustworthiness, the reality might be more complicated. As he circled the showroom floor, he cataloged each impression carefully. The dealership's facade was impressive, but beneath the polished surface, questions loomed. Sylvester felt a knot tighten in his chest. The journey to uncover the truth had only just begun, and already, his instincts warned that this place held more secrets than he expected. Sylvester's footsteps slowed as he approached a cluster of salesmen gathered near a brightly lit desk. They were mid-conversation, their voices low but confident, their easy camaraderie unmistakable. As Mike Reynolds, Sylvester knew this was his moment to blend in, to engage without drawing attention to himself. He cleared his throat softly and caught the eye of a man who looked to be in his early 30s, well-groomed and wearing a sharp navy suit. "Hey, I'm looking for some help," Sylvester said, keeping his tone casual and approachable. "Just browsing, but I could use a bit of guidance." The man smiled, extending a hand. "I'm Dave. What kind of ride are you thinking about?" Sylvester shook the hand firmly. "Something reliable, family-friendly. Not looking to break the bank." Dave nodded, the practiced salesman's smile never faltering. "We've got some great options that fit the bill. Let me introduce you to the team." One by one, the others introduced themselves. Mike, who specialized in SUVs, Brian, the finance expert, and Lisa, a newer hire with a bright demeanor and sharp sales instincts. Each greeted Sylvester warmly, their voices polished and rehearsed, but genuine enough to put most customers at ease. As they talked, Sylvester noticed the seamless way they worked together, subtle handoffs, knowing glances, a well-oiled machine honed by routine. They asked the usual questions about budget, preferences, and lifestyle, making mental notes and jotting down details. Stallone kept his answers measured, giving enough to seem interested without revealing too much. Despite the polished exterior, Sylvester detected undercurrents beneath the surface, a mix of competition and performance pressure. Dave occasionally glanced toward a corner office where the sales manager sat, reviewing charts and numbers on a computer screen. The team's enthusiasm sometimes felt less about customer care and more about hitting monthly quotas. Lisa was quick to highlight specials and push add-ons, while Brian subtly steered conversations toward financing plans that sounded beneficial but seemed complicated on purpose. Sylvester's eyes narrowed slightly. These were the kinds of tactics he'd heard about, the kind that might explain the whispers of customer complaints. By the time the introductions wrapped up, Stallone's resolve had only strengthened. This team was talented and sharp, but the lines between service and salesmanship blurred too often. He would have to watch closely if he wanted to uncover the truth behind the polished smiles. Dave led Sylvester toward a gleaming new SUV positioned prominently near the showroom center. His smile was easy, disarming, the kind designed to build trust quickly. "This one's been flying off the lot," he said, patting the hood with a practiced hand. "Great gas mileage, plenty of space for the family, and packed with the latest safety features." Sylvester nodded, playing the part of an intrigued but cautious buyer. Dave popped open the driver's door and motioned him inside. "Take a seat. Feel the leather, the space. This is comfort and reliability all wrapped into one." Sylvester settled into the seat, letting his eyes scan the dashboard, the high-tech displays glowing softly in the showroom light. Dave continued, leaning in just enough to create a sense of connection. "Now, I won't sugarcoat it. This model's not the cheapest on the lot. But think about what you're getting. Warranty coverage, roadside assistance, and a trade-in deal that could save you a chunk of change. Plus, with our financing options, the monthly payments are manageable." He smiled again, sincere but persuasive. Sylvester asked a few questions, careful not to sound too knowledgeable. Dave answered smoothly, his pitch well-rehearsed but tailored to Sylvester's earlier comments about budget and reliability. He pointed out features like the advanced braking system, blind spot monitoring, and built-in navigation. "This isn't just a car, it's peace of mind." As they moved outside for a test drive, Dave's enthusiasm grew. "I've been in sales for over 10 years, he said, "and I know a good deal when I see one. My goal is to get you into a car you love without any hassle." His tone was friendly, almost brotherly, creating a sense of partnership. But Sylvester noticed subtle shifts in the conversation, mentions of optional packages, extended warranties, and dealer fees that weren't in the original discussion. Dave downplayed these costs as small investments for added protection. Sylvester's instincts nudged him to dig deeper, but for now, he played along, absorbing every word. By the time the test drive ended, Sylvester's mind was racing. The salesman's pitch was smooth and convincing, but beneath the surface, he sensed the fine line between genuine care and calculated salesmanship. This friendly salesman might hold the key to the truth, and the next few hours would reveal just how honest the pitch really was. As Sylvester continued his tour of the dealership under Dave's guidance, small details began to catch his attention, subtle red flags that didn't quite fit the polished image. At first, they were easy to dismiss. A vague answer here, a hurried glance there, but together they started to weave a pattern. During the test drive, Dave enthusiastically extolled the car's features, but when Sylvester asked about maintenance costs, the response was surprisingly vague. "Oh, standard stuff? Nothing out of the ordinary," Dave said quickly, steering the conversation back to the car's performance. Sylvester noticed the slight hesitation in his voice, a flicker of discomfort before the practiced smile returned. Back in the showroom, when discussing financing options with Brian, the numbers seemed more complicated than necessary. Brian used industry jargon, throwing around terms like APR adjustments and dealer reserves without clear explanations. Sylvester's questions were met with quick reassurances, but the details remained murky, as if designed to confuse rather than clarify. Another moment stood out when Lisa presented an extended warranty. Her enthusiasm was palpable, yet the paperwork she handed over had fine print that Sylvester barely caught in the dim lighting. Clauses limiting coverage in ways that could leave a buyer exposed to costly repairs. When he hesitated, Lisa waved it off as standard practice, brushing aside his concerns with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sylvester also noticed how the team occasionally exchanged knowing looks when a customer voiced hesitations or asked tough questions. One middle-aged couple had just walked away after a particularly aggressive pitch, their expressions mixed with frustration and disappointment. Dave gave a quick, almost imperceptible sigh before returning his attention to Sylvester. These subtle signs weighed on Sylvester's mind. The dealership's friendly atmosphere masked a complex undercurrent of sales pressure and obfuscation. It wasn't outright deceit, at least not yet, but the pieces were shifting in a direction that made him wary. As the afternoon wore on, Sylvester knew that uncovering the truth would require patience and vigilance. These red flags, small but significant, were the first clues on a path that could expose much more than he had anticipated. Dave handed Sylvester the keys to a sleek sedan, its polished surface gleaming under the showroom lights. "Let's take this one for a spin," he said with a grin that suggested confidence, but carried a hint of something rehearsed. Sylvester accepted the keys, settling into the driver's seat as Dave climbed in beside him. The engine purred to life smoothly, and they pulled out onto the dealership's test track. Dave guided the conversation expertly, highlighting the car's responsive handling, quiet cabin, and fuel efficiency. His enthusiasm was infectious, but Sylvester remained alert, watching for anything out of place. As they rounded corners and accelerated along straightaways, Dave's tone shifted subtly. "Now, when it comes to financing, there are options that can really make this affordable," he said casually. Sylvester asked for specifics, but Dave deflected, focusing instead on the car's features. It was clear the test drive was as much about selling terms as the vehicle itself. Midway through, Dave pointed out optional packages like enhanced audio systems and advanced safety tech, painting them as must-haves for the discerning buyer. Sylvester feigned interest but caught the quick glance Dave shared with a passing colleague, an unspoken signal that this was part of the sales script. Sylvester noticed that while Dave described the car as flawless, the speedometer flickered erratically once, and the ride felt slightly rough over a pothole on the test track. Small issues glossed over with practice phrases about minor quirks and standard break-in procedures. It was as if the test drive was choreographed to distract from imperfections and steer focus toward add-ons and financing. When Sylvester inquired about the warranty covered for potential repairs, Dave's response was vague, emphasizing peace of mind without detailing limits or exclusions. The conversation circled back repeatedly to payment plans and monthly installments, subtly pushing Sylvester toward a commitment. By the time they returned to the dealership, Sylvester's instincts told him the test drive was less about the car and more about the sale. A carefully crafted performance designed to close the deal quickly, with little room for honest questions or hesitation. The friendly smile and smooth talk hid a hidden agenda, one Sylvester knew he'd need to unravel if he was to protect future customers and himself. Back inside the dealership, Sylvester settled at a sleek glass desk where Brian awaited with a stack of paperwork. The atmosphere shifted subtly. Gone was the easy rapport of the showroom floor. Here, the language turned formal, layered with legalese and fine print. Sylvester picked up the documents, scanning the pages carefully. At first glance, the contract seemed straightforward. Purchase price, financing terms, monthly payments. But as he read more closely, Sylvester's eyes caught clauses buried deep within the dense text, sections outlining fees and conditions that hadn't been mentioned earlier. There was a prepayment penalty designed to discourage early payoff and a vague dealer service fee that seemed unusually high. Sylvester's brow furrowed. "Can you walk me through these charges?" he asked Brian, who responded with practiced ease. "Standard fees," Brian said, "to cover paperwork and vehicle prep. Nothing out of the ordinary." But Sylvester wasn't convinced. He pointed to a paragraph about warranty exclusions, repairs that might be denied based on improper use or unauthorized modifications. Brian assured him that was typical, but the language left too much room for interpretation, potentially leaving customers responsible for costly repairs. The financing terms also raised questions. Interest rates appeared higher than advertised, and the repayment schedule included balloon payments that could surprise a buyer at the end of the loan. When Sylvester asked for clarification, Brian's answers grew more vague, emphasizing that customers usually never reach that point if they keep up with payments. Sylvester's gut told him this fine print was designed to trap unsuspecting buyers. These details, often overlooked or glossed over during the sales pitch, could turn a seemingly fair deal into a financial burden. The contract, he realized, was a tangle of hidden clauses that favored the dealership more than the customer. He glanced up to see Brian watching him expectantly, the polite smile never wavering. Sylvester understood the unspoken message: sign now and move forward, or raise more questions and risk losing the deal. But Sylvester wasn't here to be rushed. He folded the papers carefully, storing them mentally for later. The fine print was a warning, a signal that beneath the dealership's polished surface lurked pitfalls customers might never see until it was too late. This discovery deepened his resolve to expose the full truth. Sylvester sat back in his chair, the weight of the paperwork heavy in his hands. But heavier still was the growing knot of suspicion tightening in his gut. The more he observed, the clearer it became that the polished surface of the dealership concealed cracks that went beyond innocent oversight. Each interaction, every carefully worded pitch, seemed designed less to inform and more to manipulate. He replayed conversations in his mind, the vague answers about maintenance costs, the complicated financing jargon, the quick dismissals of his questions about the fine print. The friendly smiles and enthusiastic offers suddenly felt rehearsed, almost mechanical. It was as if the team had a script to follow, a playbook that prioritized sales numbers over genuine customer care. Sylvester's instincts, honed through years of navigating Hollywood's often deceptive world, now sharpened toward a new target. He realized this wasn't just about one or two questionable tactics. It was a system, a culture that allowed, even encouraged, bending truths to close deals faster. That realization unsettled him more than any single shady clause. He watched customers around him, their eager faces, hopeful questions, sometimes cautious hesitation. Many trusted the dealership to be honest, to honor promises made in the showroom. Sylvester knew firsthand how devastating betrayal could be when trust was broken. The thought of people being caught unaware by hidden fees or denied coverage gnawed at him. His undercover mission had shifted. What began as a simple check-in had grown into a quest for accountability. He needed to dig deeper to find concrete proof of what lay beneath the surface. Stallone wasn't just acting a part anymore. This was personal. He owed it to every customer who walked through these doors with hope and skepticism alike. As the afternoon light filtered through the large windows, Sylvester's gaze hardened. He would keep his cover, stay patient, and watch closely. The friendly smiles and smooth words might fool many, but not him. The truth was there, waiting to be uncovered, and he was determined to bring it to light, no matter the cost. Sylvester lingered near a quiet corner of the showroom where a young couple was deep in conversation with Dave. From his vantage point, Sylvester could hear fragments of their discussion, enough to raise alarm bells. The couple seemed eager but cautious, asking questions that Dave deflected with practiced ease. As the negotiation progressed, Sylvester noticed Dave's tone shift subtly. What had started as a friendly and informative pitch now carried undertones of pressure. "This deal won't last long," Dave said smoothly, eyes flicking toward the clock. "We got a couple of other buyers interested, so if you want to lock in this price, it's best to act quickly." The couple hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Sylvester watched as Dave pulled out a contract, sliding it across the desk with a flourish. The young man reached for the pen, but paused when Dave mentioned an added dealer preparation fee that hadn't come up before. Dave shrugged it off as a standard charge, just to cover detailing and inspections, but the fee was considerably higher than Sylvester expected. Sylvester's heart pounded as he listened closely. Dave quickly layered on optional extras, an extended warranty, paint protection, and anti-theft devices, each framed as necessary investments to protect their new purchase. The couple looked overwhelmed, their questions growing more hesitant. Then came the financing terms, where Brian joined the conversation. The numbers were convoluted, with interest rates that seemed to creep higher the longer the loan stretched. When the couple inquired about early payoff options, Brian's answers became vague, hinting at penalties that weren't clearly spelled out. Sylvester's suspicion solidified into certainty. This was no ordinary sale. It was a carefully orchestrated deal designed to maximize profit at the buyer's expense. The couple was caught in a web of pressure tactics and hidden costs, pushed toward decisions they barely understood. He clenched his jaw, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. This was exactly the kind of shady deal that had sparked the rumors he'd heard, the kind that betrayed customer trust and stained the dealership's reputation. Sylvester knew he had to act, but for now, he remained in the shadows, gathering evidence before making his move. Dave's confident smile never wavered as he faced Sylvester across the glossy showroom desk. Sylvester had just pressed a subtle but pointed question about the vehicle's history, a request for full transparency on any prior repairs or accidents. Dave's eyes flickered briefly, but his voice remained steady and reassuring. "Absolutely," Dave said smoothly. "This car has a clean record. No accidents, no major repairs. It's practically brand new." His tone was calm, bordering on reassuring, as if to dismiss any doubts before they could take root. Sylvester's gaze sharpened. He wasn't convinced. Over the past hours, he'd learned to read between the lines, to detect the small cracks beneath practiced facades. Something about Dave's quick answer felt rehearsed, too neat to be entirely truthful. When Sylvester asked if he could see the vehicle's full maintenance and repair history, Dave reached into his pocket and pulled out a printed report. "Here you go," he said, sliding across the desk with a flourish. The report was clean, indeed, at least on the surface. But Sylvester's trained eye caught the subtle omission of dates and service details. The report lacked the depth he expected from a thorough vehicle history. When he mentioned this, Dave laughed lightly. "These reports vary by provider," he said dismissively. "The important thing is this car's in excellent condition." Sylvester pressed further, asking about a faint scratch he'd noticed during the test drive and about a slight hesitation in the engine's idle. Dave's smile tightened just a fraction. "Minor cosmetic stuff," he replied smoothly. "Nothing that affects performance. You'd barely notice it." The salesman's confident lie hung in the air like a challenge. Bold, unapologetic, and designed to keep Sylvester from digging deeper. It was the kind of evasiveness that preys on trust, a carefully constructed narrative to shield the truth. Sylvester felt a surge of frustration, but kept his composure. This wasn't just about a single car or a single sale. It was a glimpse into a culture that valued sales over honesty. And as Dave's smile persisted, Sylvester knew this confident lie was just the beginning of what he needed to uncover. Sylvester settled into a quiet corner of the dealership's waiting area, his eyes sharp and unblinking as he observed the ongoing bustle around him. The friendly chatter, the quick smiles, and the occasional laughter painted a picture of a thriving business. Yet beneath that lively surface, Sylvester's gaze searched for cracks, small behaviors, fleeting expressions, moments that revealed something unspoken. He watched as Dave moved from one customer to another, his charm on full display. Each handshake was firm, each word carefully chosen to build trust, yet Sylvester noticed a pattern. When a customer asked a difficult question, Dave's smile tightened ever so slightly, his answers growing more scripted, less spontaneous. Sylvester caught the briefest flickers of impatience or frustration before the salesman masked them with renewed warmth. Nearby, Brian sat at his desk, fingers flying over the keyboard, his expression focused but occasionally lifting to catch a client off guard with a rapid-fire explanation of financing terms. Sylvester sensed the complexity was deliberate, a way to overwhelm and confuse rather than clarify. Lisa flitted between desks, her energy infectious, but Sylvester noted how she gently steered conversations toward add-ons and extras, often downplaying the cost or urgency. The interplay between the sales team was seamless, almost choreographed. Yet Sylvester's practiced, I detected the undercurrents of pressure beneath the surface smiles. Customers, too, offered insight. Some appeared genuinely pleased, nodding and smiling as they signed papers. Others hesitated, casting anxious glances around or exchanging uncertain whispers with companions. One older gentleman caught Sylvester's eye, his forced smile barely concealing doubt. Through it all, Sylvester remained silent, blending into the background as an unassuming observer. No grand gestures, no accusations, just steady, watchful presence. Every word, every glance, every hesitation was stored carefully in his mind. This silent observation was more than patience. It was strategy. Sylvester knew that the truth often revealed itself not in what was said aloud, but in what was quietly concealed. And as the hours ticked by, he gathered the pieces of a puzzle that promised to expose the dealership's hidden realities. Sylvester's quiet observation had uncovered troubling hints, but he needed something concrete, proof that could expose the truth behind the polished smiles and smooth sales tactics. He resolved to dig deeper, to go beyond the surface and uncover the realities hidden in contracts, records, and customer experiences. He began by asking to see maintenance logs and repair histories for several vehicles on the lot, including the ones he had already test-driven. The dealership's staff responded with practiced politeness, providing reports that looked clean but felt incomplete. Sylvester's sharp eyes caught discrepancies, missing dates, vague descriptions, and suspiciously absent details. It was clear some information had been carefully edited or withheld. Not satisfied, Sylvester requested to speak with recent customers. He posed as Mike Reynolds, interested in hearing honest opinions about their purchases. Some customers were eager to share glowing reviews, likely influenced by the friendly environment. Others, however, offered subtle warnings, unexpected fees, denied warranty claims, and feeling rushed into decisions. Sylvester took careful notes, comparing these anecdotes with what he had witnessed firsthand. Patterns emerged. Consistent reports of unclear financing terms, last-minute add-ons, and pressure to sign contracts without thorough explanation. He began to connect these dots to the vague responses he had encountered from the sales team. To further verify his findings, Sylvester discreetly examined the dealership's online reviews and social media presence. While many praised the friendly service and wide selection, a significant number echoed his concerns. Complaints about hidden fees, aggressive sales tactics, and difficulties resolving issues post-sale. The disparity between the dealership's public image and these candid accounts deepened his resolve. Late into the afternoon, Sylvester reviewed all the collected information. The evidence pointed toward a systemic problem, a culture that prioritized closing deals over honesty, often at the expense of customers' trust. It wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a pattern built into the very fabric of the sales process. The weight of these discoveries pressed on him, but Stallone knew what had to come next. He couldn't allow the deception to continue unchecked. Armed with proof, he prepared to confront the realities behind the dealership's facade and challenge those responsible, starting with the salesman whose confident lies had first sparked his suspicion. Sylvester found himself standing outside the sales manager's office, the polished wooden door a barrier between the polished showroom and the uncomfortable truths he'd uncovered. Taking a deep breath, he knocked firmly before stepping inside. The manager looked up from a spreadsheet, surprised but quickly masking it with a professional smile. Mike Reynolds, Sylvester introduced himself, keeping his tone even. I wanted to discuss some concerns about the sales process and the transparency of certain deals. The manager nodded, folding his hands on the desk. I'm here to help. What's on your mind? Sylvester laid out the facts. Vague maintenance reports, hidden fees, pressure customers, and financing terms that didn't add up. He spoke calmly but firmly, presenting the evidence he'd gathered from conversations, documents, and customer feedback. The manager's expression flickered between defensiveness and calculation. Our team works hard to close deals fairly, he said smoothly. Sometimes customers misunderstand details or expect more than what's possible. Sylvester wasn't convinced. I'm not here to blame individuals, he replied. I'm here because there's a pattern. The system encourages pushing deals without full disclosure. Customers deserve better. For a moment, the room was thick with silence. The manager leaned back, steepling his fingers. Look, business is business. We have targets to meet, but I'm open to hearing how we can improve. Sylvester pressed on, suggesting clearer contracts, transparent fees, and better staff training focused on honesty rather than just numbers. He emphasized the long-term value of customer trust over short-term sales spikes. The manager sighed, nodding slowly. I appreciate your perspective. Change won't happen overnight, but it's worth considering. Before leaving, Sylvester made it clear he would continue watching, not as a threat, but as someone invested in the dealership's reputation. The manager's handshake was firm, but the unspoken tension lingered. Both men aware this was only the beginning of a difficult process. As Sylvester stepped back into the showroom, he felt a mixture of cautious hope and steely resolve. Confronting the manager had opened a door, but real change would require persistence, transparency, and the courage to hold everyone accountable. Sylvester knew the confrontation was only a first step. Determined to uncover the full extent of the dealership's practices, he delved deeper, piecing together a broader picture of the systemic issues. He spent hours reviewing internal documents he could access, cross-referencing sales records, financing agreements, and customer complaints that had been quietly filed. Patterns emerged that confirmed his worst suspicions. Many contracts contained clauses that allowed the dealership to tack on hidden fees after the sale. Fees for processing, dealer preparation, and even vague administrative costs. These charges often went unnoticed by buyers until months later, buried in monthly statements. Sylvester also uncovered a recurring practice where salespeople were incentivized to push add-ons like extended warranties, paint protection, and insurance packages that many customers neither wanted nor fully understood. Commission structures rewarded volume over honesty, creating a culture where closing the deal mattered more than customer satisfaction. He connected with former employees willing to speak off the record, who revealed stories of pressured sales tactics, manipulated paperwork, and managers turning a blind eye to questionable practices. Some describe being coached to soften contract language or to steer conversations away from potentially troublesome topics. Online, the pattern was echoed by a steady stream of negative reviews. Customers described feeling trapped in financing deals with balloon payments and penalties, or blindsided by denied warranty claims when repairs arose. The glowing testimonials in the showroom were often offset by these harsh realities shared in forums and social media. The scale of the problem was staggering. What had seemed like isolated incidents was a well-oiled system designed to maximize profits by exploiting customer trust. Sylvester felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. This was more than just a few shady deals. It was a betrayal on a large scale. Yet amid the frustration, his resolve hardened. Exposing this network of deception wouldn't be easy, but he was committed to shining a light on it. The customers deserved nothing less, and the dealership's future depended on reckoning with the truth. Dave's expression shifted the moment Sylvester approached him again, this time no longer as a casual customer, but with an intensity that demanded answers. Sylvester laid out what he discovered: the hidden fees, the pressured add-ons, the vague contract language. Dave listened quietly, his confident smile replaced by a guarded calm. I get it, Dave began, voice steady but firm. You think we're just out here trying to trick people, but it's not that simple. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. This business? It's tough. We have quotas, overhead, and competition breathing down our necks every day. Sometimes the lines get blurry, not because we want to deceive, but because we're trying to keep the dealership afloat. Sylvester raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, letting Dave continue. Look, I'm proud of what I do, Dave admitted. I believe in helping customers find the right car, but the reality is that there's pressure from management to upsell. If you don't hit numbers, you're out. It's not personal, it's survival. Sylvester noted the flicker of frustration in Dave's eyes, a man caught between loyalty to his job and the compromises it demanded. But what about honesty? What about the trust customers place in us? Dave sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't like feeling like I'm selling smoke and mirrors. But sometimes the truth is complicated. Financing terms, fees, they're real costs that have to be covered. The problem is, the system isn't set up to make that easy to explain. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken tension. Dave's defense wasn't an excuse. It was a confession of the pressures within the dealership's culture. Sylvester recognized a man struggling with the moral weight of his role, caught in a system that pushed him toward choices he wished weren't necessary. For a moment, Stallone considered how to respond. This wasn't just about calling out wrongdoing. It was about understanding and changing a flawed environment. Dave's honesty opened a new avenue. Perhaps the key to reform lay not only in exposure, but in collaboration. Sylvester nodded slowly. Thanks for being straight with me. But change has to start somewhere. And it starts with people willing to stand up. The challenge was clear, and the journey toward integrity was just beginning. Sylvester moved quietly through the dealership, this time seeking out those whose actions spoke louder than the polished sales pitches. He knew that among the team, there were individuals who valued honesty and integrity, even in a culture that often pressured them otherwise. Finding them was crucial to building momentum for real change. In a small break room tucked away from the showroom floor, Sylvester spotted Lisa, the newer saleswoman whose bright energy had caught his attention earlier. Approaching her with a genuine smile, he struck up a casual conversation, careful not to reveal too much, but inviting openness. Lisa hesitated at first, then sighed. It's tough, she admitted. I want to do right by customers, but the pressure to meet quotas is intense. Sometimes it feels like you have to choose between your paycheck and your principles. Sylvester nodded empathetically. I understand, but it's people like you who can make a difference. I'm looking for ways to help improve things here for the team and the customers. Encouraged, Lisa shared stories of customers who left confused or frustrated, deals that felt rushed, and moments when she'd spoken up against questionable tactics only to be brushed aside. Her honesty was a small crack in the facade, but it held immense potential. Next, Sylvester sought out Mike, a veteran salesman known for his steady demeanor and loyal customer base. Mike's approach was different. He prioritized building long-term relationships over quick sales. When Sylvester mentioned his mission, Mike's eyes lit up with quiet determination. I've been here long enough to see the ups and downs, Mike said. The system pushes hard, but there's still room for honesty if you fight for it. We just need the right support and leadership. Together, they began to discuss practical steps, clearer communication with customers, transparent pricing, and training focused on ethical sales. More importantly, they agreed on the need to unite like-minded staff to create a network of support within the dealership. As the day wore on, Sylvester sensed a shift. The honest voices were not isolated. They were a growing force ready to push back against the pressures that had long dominated. With their support, he felt the first real hope that change was possible from within the team itself. Sylvester retreated to a quiet corner of the dealership's lounge, pulling out a notebook to organize his thoughts. The hours spent undercover had revealed a tangled web of pressures, compromises, and small deceptions, but also the flicker of hope. Honest staff willing to stand up. Now, it was time to plan his next move carefully. He reviewed the information he'd gathered. Contract inconsistencies, hidden fees, pressured sales tactics, and the uneasy admissions from both management and salespeople. Each piece was a thread in a larger pattern that demanded exposure and reform. But Sylvester knew that confronting the problem head-on without strategy could backfire, alienating allies and allowing the status quo to tighten its grip. His plan began to take shape. First, he would document everything meticulously. Contracts, recordings of conversations where possible, written statements from staff willing to share their experiences. This evidence would be undeniable, laying a solid foundation for any action he might take. Next, Sylvester intended to arrange a meeting with the honest sales team members he'd connected with, Lisa, Mike, and others quietly dissatisfied with the culture. Together, they could brainstorm concrete proposals for improving transparency, customer communication, and ethical sales practices. He wanted to empower them to be advocates from within, creating a ripple effect that could influence the entire dealership. At the same time, he recognized the need to address management directly. His earlier conversation with the sales manager had revealed some openness to change, but that willingness would require pressure balanced with collaboration. Sylvester would prepare a detailed presentation outlining the risks of continuing on the current path, not just legal or financial risks, but the long-term damage to reputation and customer loyalty. Finally, Stallone considered the wider community, the customers themselves. Public trust was fragile, and transparency was key. He planned to engage local consumer advocacy groups and perhaps even launch an informational campaign to educate buyers on their rights and what to watch for in dealership dealings. As he closed his notebook, Sylvester felt a surge of determination. The road ahead would be challenging, but with careful planning and united effort, he believed change was not only possible, it was imperative. The next phase of his undercover mission was about to begin, and this time, he would come prepared to confront the system at every level. Sylvester's plan moved from careful observation to decisive action. With the support of Lisa, Mike, and a handful of other trusted staff, he organized a bold sting operation designed to expose the dealership's deceptive practices in real time. The goal was clear: catch the sales team in the act of pushing hidden fees or pressuring customers, gathering undeniable proof that could no longer be ignored. They coordinated quietly, selecting a pair of undercover customers from among the staff, people who would pose as buyers vulnerable to the common tactics Sylvester had uncovered. These volunteers were briefed extensively, armed with hidden recording devices and a clear script to test the limits of the sales process. Sylvester himself took a back seat during the operation, observing from a distance but ready to step in if necessary. The dealership buzzed with its usual energy, unaware that a carefully orchestrated investigation was underway. The undercover buyers were greeted with a familiar charm, but as expected, the pressure tactics soon followed. Salespeople pushed add-ons aggressively, glossing over important details and glossing over fees that weren't disclosed up front. When the buyers hesitated, subtle nudges and warnings about losing the deal of a lifetime surfaced, tactics designed to coerce quick decisions. Hidden cameras and microphones captured every moment. The confident lies, the evasive answers, the moments when staff exchanged quick, anxious glances as the sting unfolded. Sylvester watched the footage live, his heart pounding as the truth he suspected was confirmed in vivid detail. The operation was a turning point. The evidence was irrefutable, a clear demonstration of systemic issues that no amount of polite denial could erase. It provided Sylvester and the honest staff with a leverage they needed to demand immediate change. As the sting concluded, Sylvester knew the next steps would be critical. With proof in hand, he could no longer stay in the shadows. It was time to bring the full weight of accountability to the dealership, to protect future customers and restore integrity to a place that had lost its way. Sylvester stood near the showroom floor as the buzz of customers filled the space, the usual bright lights casting sharp reflections on the polished cars. Today, however, the atmosphere was charged with a different energy, one of quiet anticipation. With the sting operation's evidence in hand, Sylvester was ready to make his move. He called a brief meeting, gathering staff and a handful of customers who had agreed to witness the confrontation. Eyes shifted as Sylvester addressed the room, his voice steady but commanding. "We've uncovered some troubling practices here," he began, "practices that have hurt customers and undermined the trust this dealership depends on." He projected footage from the sting operation, hidden cameras capturing salespeople pushing hidden fees, pressuring hesitant buyers, and bending the truth to close deals. The room fell silent, the weight of undeniable proof settling over everyone. Sylvester's gaze locked on Dave, the salesman whose confident lies had first raised alarm. Dave's expression shifted from surprise to defensiveness as the video played, his polished smile fading under the scrutiny of staff and customers alike. With no room left for denial, Sylvester confronted him directly. "This isn't about personal failure. It's about responsibility. These tactics aren't just unethical. They're unacceptable." He turned to the customers, his tone resolute. "You deserve transparency, respect, and honesty. That's what we aim to rebuild." Several customers nodded, some voicing relief that the truth was finally coming out. Staff members exchanged looks, some ashamed, others hopeful that change was possible. Dave, cornered but composed, offered a reluctant apology, though the damage was clear. Sylvester used the moment to emphasize the dealership's commitment to reform. Clearer contracts, honest communication, and training focused on integrity. As the meeting closed, Sylvester felt a surge of determination. Exposing the salesman was a pivotal victory, but the real work was just beginning. The trust of the community had been shaken, and rebuilding it would require ongoing effort, transparency, and the courage to hold everyone accountable. Today's confrontation was a statement, a promise that the dealership would no longer tolerate deception and that every customer's trust was worth fighting for. The fallout from the public confrontation rippled quickly through the dealership and beyond. Inside the showroom, conversations hushed and staff exchanged uneasy glances. The polished facade that had once masked the underlying issues now felt fragile, cracked by the weight of truth. Sylvester moved among his team with a steady presence, knowing the revelations had shaken not just the sales floor, but the very foundation of the business. Customers who had witnessed the exposure lingered, sharing whispered comments about the courage it took to bring such practices to light. Some expressed gratitude, relieved that someone was standing up for their interests. Others looked on skeptically, wondering how much damage had already been done. News of the sting operation and the public outing spread quickly through local media and online platforms. Social media buzzed with clips of the confrontation, sparking debates about dealer ethics and consumer rights. The dealership's reputation teetered on a knife's edge. Some applauded the commitment to change, while others questioned whether the damage was irreparable. Within the team, the atmosphere was tense but charged with a new energy. Honest staff members felt emboldened, ready to push for the reform Sylvester had promised. Meanwhile, others wrestled with uncertainty, confronting the consequences of the culture they had long accepted or participated in. Sylvester addressed the entire staff in a meeting, acknowledging the challenges ahead, but stressing the opportunity to rebuild stronger. This moment is painful, he admitted, but it's also a turning point. We can choose to learn, grow, and regain the trust of our customers and community. He announced immediate steps: enhanced transparency in contracts, stricter oversight on fees and add-ons, and a revamped training program emphasizing ethics and customer respect. Management would be held accountable, and an open-door policy would encourage staff to report concerns without fear. The road to redemption would be long and difficult, but the dealership was no longer a place where deception could hide in plain sight. The revelations had shaken the business to its core, but they had also ignited the spark needed for real transformation. Sylvester's resolve was clear. The dealership would rise from this reckoning, stronger and more honest than ever before. Sylvester understood that regaining customer trust would be the true test of the dealership's commitment to change. Words alone wouldn't suffice. Actions had to speak louder. With renewed focus, he spearheaded an outreach campaign targeting loyal customers and those who had expressed dissatisfaction. The dealership began by personally contacting recent buyers, inviting them to discuss their experiences and voice any concerns. Sylvester and several trusted staff members listened intently, acknowledging past mistakes without excuses. They offered tangible solutions, fee refunds where appropriate, extended warranties at no cost, and priority service appointments to address any lingering issues. To reinforce transparency, the dealership revamped its communication materials. Contracts were simplified, with clear explanations of fees, financing terms, and warranty coverage. Salespeople received extensive retraining, emphasizing honesty and patience over pressure and quick closes. Open house events were organized, welcoming customers to tour the showroom and meet the staff committed to these new standards. Sylvester himself made appearances, engaging directly with visitors, answering questions, and sharing the steps taken to improve. Customer feedback was encouraged through multiple channels: surveys, suggestion boxes, and direct lines to management. The dealership made a point to publicly acknowledge and respond to both praise and criticism, demonstrating accountability. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Repeat customers returned, encouraged by the sincerity of the outreach and the visible changes. Positive reviews increased, highlighting respectful service and clear communication. Word spread that the dealership was serious about earning back the community's trust. Sylvester knew the journey wasn't over. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But each small victory fueled the team's resolve. He reminded everyone that loyal customers were the heart of the business, deserving respect and transparency at every step. Through consistent effort and genuine care, the dealership started to heal its reputation. Repairing trust was not a quick fix, but a continuous commitment, and Sylvester was determined to see it through, ensuring the dealership would never again compromise its integrity. Sylvester gathered the entire sales team and staff in the showroom for a final meeting before closing time. The room was filled with a mix of anticipation and nervous energy. Sylvester's presence commanded attention, not as the famous actor many knew, but as a leader who had walked through the fire alongside them. He began by acknowledging the challenges they had faced. "This past month has been tough on all of us," he said, voice steady and sincere. "We uncovered truths that weren't easy to face, and we confronted mistakes that could have been ignored. But that's not who we are, not what this dealership stands for." His eyes swept the room, meeting the gaze of each person. Change isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about building something better, something we can all be proud of. Integrity, honesty, respect for our customers. That's the foundation we need to lay. Sylvester emphasized the importance of teamwork, urging everyone to support one another as they move forward. "We're all in this together. No one succeeds alone. Every interaction, every sale, every conversation with a customer is a chance to show what we stand for." He reminded them that rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and unwavering commitment. There will be challenges ahead. Old habits die hard, and pressure to meet goals won't disappear overnight. But if we hold fast to these values, we will not only survive, we will thrive. With genuine warmth, he thanked the staff who had stood up for honesty and courage throughout the process. "Your voices mattered. Your actions made a difference. Let's keep that spirit alive." Before concluding, Sylvester shared a personal note. "I came here to protect this place, not just as an investment, but as a promise to every person who walks through those doors. You are the heart of this dealership, and together, we will rebuild that promise stronger than ever." As he finished, the room broke into applause, a collective moment of renewed hope and determination. Sylvester's final words weren't just an end to a difficult chapter. They were a call to action, a reminder that the future was theirs to shape. Months had passed since Sylvester's undercover mission shook the dealership to its core. Now, walking through the showroom, he felt a profound sense of change, not just in the physical space, but in the atmosphere that filled it. The tension that once lingered had given way to a renewed spirit of honesty and respect. Customers arrived with smiles, greeted warmly by staff who listened attentively and communicated clearly. Contracts were transparent, fees clearly explained, and financing options laid out with care. The culture had shifted from one of pressure to one of partnership. Sylvester watched as Lisa patiently walked a young couple through their choices, answering questions without haste or hidden agendas. Mike was helping a repeat customer select a vehicle, his steady approach a testament to the trust he had earned. Behind the scenes, management enforced new policies with vigilance, ensuring that integrity was more than a buzzword. It was a daily practice. The community had noticed, too. Positive reviews and word-of-mouth recommendations steadily increased, and the dealership's reputation began to rebuild. Customers expressed gratitude not just for the cars they purchased, but for the genuine care they received. Sylvester knew that trust, once broken, takes time to heal, but the progress was undeniable. Regular training sessions reinforced the commitment to ethical sales practices, empowering staff to prioritize customer needs over quick commissions. Open forums encouraged honest feedback, fostering an environment where concerns were addressed promptly and transparently. For Sylvester, this new beginning was a victory far beyond sales numbers. It was about restoring faith in the dealership, in the people who work there, and most importantly, in the promises made to every customer who walked through the doors. As he stood by the entrance, watching a family drive off in their new car with genuine smiles, Sylvester allowed himself a quiet smile. Integrity had been restored, not by chance, but through courage, accountability, and relentless dedication. The journey had been difficult, but the result was a dealership reborn, one where trust was earned every day and honesty was the foundation of every deal. This was the legacy Sylvester was proud to leave behind.